you.
Half-Life is one of the greatest games of all time. It defined first-person shooter games and storytelling games as we know it today. So, naturally, when it was released in 1998, people were blown away. Nothing like this had ever been attempted before. And this Half-Life was made by Valve. Valve was made up of former Microsoft employees set out to do something more with their careers. And look at what they made. Half-Life. One of the... just look at this. Golly. I would have peed my pants if I were around back then looking at this. Even just look at this. Wow. It's like... oh my gosh. It's like Doom, but like fully 3D, but like Quake 3, which hasn't even come out at this point. I mean, think about it. Like, put yourself in this time period. You'll know what I mean. But all this graphical power and great storytelling, you know, you had to have a really good computer to play it to its fullest capabilities. So, naturally, people wanted to be able to play this on the big screen, in their living rooms, at home. In 2000, Sierra began development of a Dreamcast port of Half-Life. This port was meant to feature a brand spanking new expansion pack for Half-Life called Blue Shift, along with better visuals and effects. A second disc release would have provided the online multiplayer experience using Sega Net. So this is multiplayer for Half-Life on a console. I mean, seriously guys, like, what? So, this second multiplayer-focused game was planned to include Opposing Forces Deathmatch and Capture the Flag modes, along with potentially having the full single-player campaign co-op as a bonus, Team Fortress Classic, Half-Life Deathmatch, a version of Counter-Strike, and one or more of the popular multiplayer mods. Now this all sounds really awesome, and people were super excited. I mean, the hype surrounding this game was amazing. It was set to release at the end of 2001, but this was a bad year for Sega Dreamcast. Of course, as we all know, Sega discontinued the Sega Dreamcast, and a lot of the games were getting canceled. But Half-Life was pretty much kept on the quiet, you know? It was... not much was said, and people speculated for months prior to them actually announcing it, that Half-Life might be canceled. Retailers weren't really showing the true release date after a while, and it was all left up in the air. So, in September of 2001, just 2 months before Half-Life for the Dreamcast was set to release, Sierra said they weren't going to make it anymore. Due to the changing market conditions, they had canceled Half-Life for the Sega Dreamcast. I'm guessing, and this is just speculation, it just wouldn't have been profitable. They didn't think the future of the Dreamcast was very bright, and, you know, I don't blame them, honestly. But the thing is, it was kind of a waste of money on their part. They already had basically completely developed the game. Obviously, the multiplayer features I talked about earlier were cut, and that was meant to be part of the final game, and they did cut that. But it was finished. It was pretty much 99% done. Now, the development of Half-Life for the Sega Dreamcast was not wasted, per se. They actually used this build of Half-Life for the PS2 version, along with some updated textures, obviously, because the PS2 has slightly better graphical power than the Sega Dreamcast. But the Sega Dreamcast can pull off far better, crisper and cleaner textures than the N64 or any of the other competing systems, you know, PlayStation 1, you name it. So, and you don't have to have a bulky computer to play it. So this was naturally a very good looking game for anybody who pre-ordered it and was ready to play it, you know? And like I said earlier, this game was pretty much done. this was what they were going to release. They did cut the multiplayer, so it was done. And in 2003, they found the latest build of the Dreamcast version of Half-Life, numbered 1672, and it was leaked to the public, and it was dumped online in CDI format, just so we can download it and put that sucker on our Sega Dreamcast. So now, today, in the year 2017, approaching Christmas, we can play Half-Life on the Sega Dreamcast in all of its glory, and thoroughly enjoy what it could have been. So, without further ado, we're going to take a look at Half-Life for the Sega Dreamcast. Half-Life starts off in a train. You're given a tour of the facility of Black Mesa, in which you work. You play as Gordon Freeman, a 20-something-year-old theoretical physicist who's here to conduct an experiment. And that is where it all begins to go wrong. Once you finally get off the train, you are greeted by your security guards, and you realize how much fun it is to just screw around. You know, before the game, it's really a lot of fun. You push buttons, you talk to people, you just cause mischief. And you're already late for work, as you've been told a million times by 3 different scientists, but you still have time to blow up this guy's microwave casserole, seen here on screen now.
My God, what are you doing?
So you make your way to the locker banks and you find your hazard suit, the thing everybody's just hounding on you to get on. You finally put that on and you notice that the best dance number you've ever heard starts playing, and you just get up, you set your controller down, you begin dancing and screwing around in the locker room.
For use in hazardous environment conditions, high impact reactive armor activated, atmospheric.
After all that is over with, you get out of the locker room and you realize people still won't just leave you alone. I mean, they want you to go do the experiment, and you're going to be guided to the most boring room with the most boring people telling you about boring stuff that you don't even understand. But just wait. It's a setup for something that will come later. It's pretty easy to notice that Half-Life on the Sega Dreamcast is just really good looking. In order to accomplish that, there are a lot of load times. Here on screen, this is an actual load time. There are a lot more load times than there are on the PC. I'd say about 3 times more. But it's a small price to pay. It's not actually that, you know, annoying. I mean, some people will say, oh man, the load times in this game, they're awful, I can't play it, but they're not that bad. And people, in the various rips of the game, they have actually set a custom file order. And this actually reduces the load times and the frequency of load times. So, in the link for the game, I will put that down there, so enjoy. But back to what's important. The graphics. The graphics in this game are great. I would even go as far to say this is one of the greatest looking Sega Dreamcast games that I've ever laid my eyes on. And this version of Half-Life is boasting the high definition pack that was later put on PC with the release of Half-Life Blue Shift. And this high definition pack really makes all the models, all the weapon models, all the character models look really good. Less blocky, more smooth. People actually have facial animation, you know, the polygon counts are high. So you can enjoy one of the greatest looking Sega Dreamcast games for free. Right off the bat, you're going to notice this game is balls to the wall, hard to control. And they actually got around with the not having 2 analog sticks by doing a couple different things. First of all, A, B, X, Y, that's used to move, strafe, move backwards, all that. The actual analog stick is used to look around. The trigger, the right trigger is used to shoot. The left trigger is used like the shift button. And you do that and you hold the left trigger down and you can inspect it and you can see what weapons you have. And then the D-pad is mapped to do everything else. Without getting into too many spoilers, Half-Life takes you through an experiment in this guy's work. Gordon Freeman's job is basically he's a scientist and he's been chosen for an experiment and the experiment goes horribly wrong, unleashing connection to an alien world, and this basically wreaks havoc on Black Mesa. Later on in the game, the military gets involved, and The enemies become more dynamic and hard, and you'll see later down the line here how things turn out. Just after the experiment, things start to speed up. Fast! Really fast. Sonic fast. But this is Half-Life. Players introduced to certain platforming challenges, different puzzles, you know, situations like the one you see in front of you. Everyone is telling you, we need to get up to the surface. So Gordon Freeman takes it upon himself to save Black Mesa and get help. But when that help finally arrives, they realize they don't really want that help anymore. So about after you get out of the office complex, you realize, oh crap, the military showed up. Well, what does the military want to do? Well, not help you. They're actually just trying to bury the whole thing. You know, a whole cover-up job. And the scientists and everybody working in the facility starts to lose all hope. People go crazy. People aren't happy. And it's very hard. These are very, like, bad circumstances to be in. So naturally anyone would go crazy. Some people want to escape, get out as soon as possible. Some surrender to the military. And some just want to stay put. Like this guy in the office complex. You'll notice that due to the control setup, they did implement some degree of auto-aim, which was later fully realized in the PS2 version with just a complete target assist aimbot type thing. Half-Life is just a great story, and it's so much fun to play through. And the Sega Dreamcast is a great place to do it. You can get it, you can burn it to a CD, it's not very hard. I will put a tutorial on my channel for this specific purpose. And you've got a great game, a fully realized game, on your Sega Dreamcast. And it's also one of the later titles, so it has the benefit of fully taking charge of the hardware. It's a good, like, tech demo almost for the Sega Dreamcast, but it's fully playable. Another thing I'd like to point out is the game's only single player. You've got Blue Shift, and you also have Opposing Force on the same system, and I will review those separately, but there's no multiplayer. There's no multiplayer. They were going to put multiplayer, and I think, honestly, like, as a perspective, if they put multiplayer on here with the Sega Net, I think that would have outsold Halo easily. I don't even think Halo would have became a thing, you know? Because I think, from what it sounds like, there would have been Capture the Flag, there would have been Deathmatch, there would have been a couple different modes, and also said Counter-Strike and other multiplayer mods, which this can mean only one thing. Yeah, you know, Sven Co-op, the best Half-Life mod, in fact the best mod of any kind to ever grace the internet. And if this was on the Sega Dreamcast, which to some degree it could have been, it's not a very demanding mod, it's basically just as much as the first Half-Life, and you got all these different scenarios, and it could have been infinite content. So, you know, it's a good thing to think about. So my final thoughts on this game, or this port, is that it's a solid port, guys. It's really good. And something I failed to mention before is that you don't actually have to use the janky controller setup. It is overall easy to get used to, I will say that, but you could purchase a Sega keyboard and a Sega mouse, and that'll probably set you back about $30, but it's the best way to play it. And I do not have that luxury, and I adapted the controller quite well, and I'm sure you can too. But for the money, which is not that much, I mean, you have to invest in a computer, obviously, a Dreamcast, and a way to burn the disc. For the money, it's great. And Half-Life on the Dreamcast is a solid port. It shows the great graphics potential of the Sega Dreamcast hardware. It was far ahead of its time, the Sega Dreamcast was, and the Half-Life was also ahead of its time. It's a match made in heaven, if you think about it. My favorite game on my favorite console, Half-Life for the Sega Dreamcast. Pick it up in the description. I'll be making a full step-by-step tutorial showing you how to burn this to work on your Sega Dreamcast. It's not as hard as you think, and you'll be glad you did it. I also just want to wish everyone a happy holidays, a Merry Christmas, of course. As you know by now, if you're a long-time viewer of my channel, every year I do a video on Half-Life as my Christmas special, so this was it. I wanted to step it up a little. This is all mostly footage I recorded and other footage I found online. But yeah, everyone, Merry Christmas, and subscribe please to my channel. It's getting a lot better by the day. Bye-bye now.